How do you come back from the depths of despair? That was the desperate challenge facing a woman for whom every day was a battle for survival, a battle she had to fight alone. Everybody had given up on her. Then, when it seemed there was no way out, she met the one person who wouldn't give up. On August 21st, 1984, Leslie Smith did something no one could comprehend. She took a book of matches and deliberately set herself on fire.
I was not a productive member of society, and I had nothing left to live for. I didn't have friends. I didn't have anybody that would even miss me if I was gone.
For much of her life, Leslie lived in a personal hell. On the outside, she seemed normal, even happy. But in her mind, she battled the demons of mental illness.
I've actually been in 3 state mental institutions. All of them are very bad. They're like something out of a 1920s movie and very similar to what you saw in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Diagnosed with major depression and borderline personality disorder, Leslie would launch into uncontrollable rages, then sink into periods of deep depression. It was more than her family could handle.
My parents were frustrated, they felt helpless, and I was difficult to deal with. And so I really was alone because they had pulled away. They had a lot of issues that they had to deal with too.
By the time she was a freshman in college, Leslie could no longer cope. She attempted suicide several times. Once, she even tried to jump from a building. Then, on an August evening, after being committed to a psychiatric hospital for the 3rd time, Leslie found what she thought was a way out of her despair.
I couldn't think straight. I was really agitated, and that night one of the staff was smoking cigarettes and left her cigarettes and matches on the coffee table and walked away to tend to somebody that was being disruptive. And I picked up the matches and I pocketed them and I put my pajamas on and I set them on fire. And I tried really hard to clench my teeth so I wouldn't scream. But the flames got so intense that it just finally came out, and people came running. They wrapped me in a blanket. They took me down to the seclusion room and they put me in restraints.
Leslie suffered 3rd-degree burns from her neck to her thighs, and as she lay in bed depressed and in pain, she thought only of dying, until suddenly it occurred to her.
I thought, you know, Leslie, you can't die yet. You haven't seen the Grand Canyon. And I don't know why that came to my mind, but the Grand Canyon, just in my mind, is one of these magnificent things. And from that moment on, I sort of made a decision that I was going to try.
She was 24 years old, and for the first time could see the promise that life held. Eventually, Leslie convinced doctors to release her from the hospital. But with no money, no job, and no place to go, her life went from bad to unbearable.
I had very long hair at the time, which was not matted, but very knotted. I kept it in a ponytail. I didn't have access to a comb to comb it. So, and I wasn't very clean either. So I was probably pretty close to being your stereotypic image of a homeless person.
For weeks, Leslie lived on the streets of Raleigh, North Carolina. Desperate to find help, she turned to a place called Urban Ministries.
I was sitting at my desk looking out at the front stairs down which everyone who came who needed help, and I saw this person coming, and clearly she was walking with very great difficulty, much pain.
Sister Helen Wright, a Catholic nun, was one of the several counselors working that day, and it was only by chance that she was assigned to help Leslie. When they met, Sister Helen saw something that others had not.
I said to myself from the beginning, this young woman has some inner resources that don't show up yet, but I'm sure they're there.
She asked what she could do for me. And I don't know what it was, whether it was her eyes or her smile. But at that moment, I knew this woman cared about me, and I poured my heart out to her.
Leslie and Sister Helen connected immediately. Instead of dwelling on the misery of her past, Sister Helen showed Leslie how she could give her life purpose by volunteering to help others.
Sister Helen saved my life, and she also turned it around. And By believing in me, she gave me that glimmer that maybe there is something there. God's goodness and providence helps us be in certain places with certain people at certain times.
It was while volunteering at a retreat for the disabled that Leslie opened the door to a miracle. She told a woman she met how she had always wanted to be a scientist.
About a month later, I got a phone call, and the gentleman on the phone said, "Hello, my name is Jan Drake. I'm a scientist out at Research Triangle Park, and someone here tells me you're interested in doing science."
Dr. Jan Drake wasn't just a scientist, but the chief of molecular genetics at the National Institute of Environmental Health Science, and he invited Leslie to come work with him.
She came in and she did science, she did good science, that led to publications. She carried her weight. What we did, I and the other people in the lab, was to provide her an opportunity to develop.
For the first time in her life, Leslie was making it on her own. But as she approached her first Christmas alone, she worried about depression. That week, she got a call from her longtime physician, who scheduled a checkup for 8 a.m. Christmas morning.
I asked him why he arranged for this appointment on a day when the clinic was closed, and he looked at me and he said, "Leslie, I know you're struggling with depression over the holidays, and I wanted you not only to have a reason to get out of bed Christmas Day, but I wanted someone to be there to wish you Merry Christmas." And that just meant the world to me.
What I knew was a person who was in need and needed working with and needed taking care of the whole person, and that's what I tried to do.
I believe there are guardian angels on earth, and I believe every time I fell down there was someone there to pick me up. Somebody coughs or, fire alarm goes off.
Inspired and encouraged by those who had helped her, Leslie found not only the will to live, but a reason for living. She went back to school, and in 1997, 13 years after setting herself ablaze, she graduated from Duke University on a full scholarship. Today, she is in her second year of medical school at Eastern Carolina State University.
Take a deep breath. When I get finished with med school, my dream is to work in a small town in the southern Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. I want to treat people that don't have insurance, people that fall through the cracks. Yet I also, in some way, want to be able to make medicine an intrinsic right and not a commodity.
Recently, Leslie accomplished one more goal with the help of her boyfriend. She finally took that trip she had promised herself 13 years earlier. The trip that had given her a reason to live.
I challenged her and told her that if she could make it through her first year of medical school, then I would treat her to a trip out to the Grand Canyon to do a rafting trip.
We went on this awesome trip. It was incredible. I used to always joke with Hank that the moment I saw the Grand Canyon, I was going to drop over dead because that was the only thing that kept me alive. And he reminded me that there are other beautiful things in this world that I need to set my sights on seeing. So no, I haven't given up life because I've seen the Grand Canyon.
Leslie plans to become a doctor so that she can work with people who can't afford decent medical care. By helping strangers, she's helping to repay the strangers who helped her.